Listen, Manoj, I want to congratulate you on your India presentation because you highlight a very interesting problem that we have in North America, and that is demographics. I represent a demographic which is slowly evaporating, and our workforce in North America is very hard to come by skilled personnel and then to keep them. And when somebody leaves, it's very, very difficult to fill that position with another knowledgeable person that has come up to speed on that business. And this puts business at risk. It also opens up possibilities for automation. Our expertise and manufacturing CIP services is manufacturing for hard goods, and specifically what I'll be showing here today is a solution born of a demographic problem in one of our customers. So this is a customer that had one senior planner scheduler for their manufacturing factory, just one, and an understudy who was a half-time employee in case she got sick. This presented an interesting problem related to that company's exploding business volumes. What to do when you can't find the right people with the right skill set in order to address your business. You have two choices. One, you don't do any more business. And if you're not doing any more business, you are, by definition, slowly going out of business. Pretty simple and straightforward. So, what our customer wanted to do was to remove that vulnerability with automation. So the message here is, changing demographics in India presents an interesting opportunity for an explosion of industry success. Changing demographics in North America presents an interesting opportunity for automation. And that's part of the message that I want to deliver today. The other part of the message is, when you solve complex problems, they need to be solved in 3 clicks or less. Mainly because transactional systems create more problems than they solve. This is pretty simple and straightforward. At least that's our mantra. So our operational complexity that we want to address is, how do we replace a resource that cannot be replaced? Did I skip ahead one? There we go. The operation has complex operations, multi-level bill of materials. Does everybody know what a bill of material is in manufacturing? There's sub-assemblies within sub-assemblies ad nauseum. In this case, this customer had bill of materials that reached 12 levels deep, which is pretty highly complex. Over 1,000 new projects are developed every year. Currently, they have more than 2,200 active projects in their factory. And those projects explode out to more than 100,000 active work orders in the factory itself. 100,000 permissions to do work. It's a work order. The resource constraints we had to deal with is, how do we do planning and scheduling when there's only one senior planner and no plans to add additional overhead? And why are there no plans to add additional overhead? Mainly because you could add somebody as an employee, but they don't know the business. Pretty simple. The other side of it is, with the data explosion of more than 100,000 open production work orders, I apologize for all the popping, all the 100,000 open production work orders, they have to be managed. They have to be initially planned and then released. And then when poo happens, they have to be rescheduled. So you really don't have a very nice scenario in terms of the challenge. So in terms of the operational complexity, with over 100,000 work orders open at one time, these are all based upon what are so-called standard work hours to accomplish a task. And do you have days when you're very efficient, days when you are exactly efficient, and days when not much goes right and things go really wrong really fast. And when you have a 12-level deep bill of material, things go really wrong really fast, exponentially. There's an explosion of chaos. So in a departmental orientation of departments within a factory, we have a further breakdown of work centers within departments. We have to coordinate the planning and scheduling of all of these 100,000 plus work orders with both forward and backward planning. We want to move a project forward in time, and we want to move a project back in time when certain things happen. So that's called bi-directional planning. We also do a thing called inside-out planning, where the front end of the project is really good, the back end of the project is really good, but the middle is in big trouble, and we need to schedule just that part. That's called inside-out planning. The other side of it is we have to do dynamic scheduling. Dynamic scheduling means when something happens in the factory, we have to pull back the project work orders and associated purchase orders, and we have to dynamically change the dates that things start and stop, and we have to reload the factory floor with the new production schedule. Dynamic scheduling. And you have to do all of that in the face of exploding business volumes. So that's the operational complexity that we had to come to grips with. Believe it or not, they were trying to do all of this with Microsoft Excel. And Microsoft Excel, over 100,000 work orders. Does anybody want to predict what that looks like and what it's going to result in? It's a single user perspective on data that doesn't share data well, and it breaks all the time. So that obviously was not going to work. So how do we deal with 100,000 work orders that blow out to more than 400,000 work breakdown structures? We have to do it using a hierarchical data presentation. Now, hierarchical data presentation is not done well in Microsoft Excel. If anybody try to do that, everybody knows that that's a very big limitation. And so we needed to be able to explode a project in all of its levels. We needed to be able to do that in a single screen. And we had to have an Excel compatible experience. Why is that? Because that was the starting point of that users trying to do planning and scheduling. We also wanted to have JavaScript performance with client-side processing, because we do the planning and scheduling in a sandbox simulation special SQL Server database. So that meant that some of the, is that me? No. Okay. And so that meant that some of the UI activity had to be scripted in JavaScript within the presentation of data. We also needed to have custom layout extensions of the screen so that we could meet a specific use case for the planner or scheduler at the stage of planning, scheduling, rescheduling, and rescheduling again. So that meant that the columns had to change and the layout of the screen had to change. That's where TreeGrid comes into play, because it addresses all of these concerns. It is a JavaScript, Excel-friendly web spreadsheet. It has its limitations. Its limitations are 1 billion with a B like boy cells arranged in any combination of rows and columns. So it's more than capable of handling all of the data that we can possibly throw at it. We did some custom extensions here that you'll see in a second, but the key solution features of using this approach, as you'll see in a minute, it's a single screen operation. The user can do what they need to do in 3 clicks or less. If the user can't do it in 3 clicks or less, it fails, in my opinion. It also results in data that can serve as a real-time Gantt visualizer. So this is real-time factory floor schedule versus actual. Are you overloaded on the factory floor? Do you have late purchase orders supplying those work orders? And it means also that we can do targeted rescheduling of the entire project without losing the context of the entire project Otherwise, we would have many different layered screens to transact a schedule change of a planned purchase order, and released purchase order, a planned work order, and a released work order. We want to get rid of all of those layered screens. We want it all done on one screen. The targeted rescheduling side is all done based upon departmental and work center rules. Thank you, AwareIM, because we are able to express the rules of movement between work centers and between departments of work centers that affects the day's calculation of start dates and stop dates. It also means that we have the basis of discovering in a single page, as you'll see in a moment, automatic notifications that can be sent to the buyers to reschedule planned purchase orders or actual release purchase orders. And again, why is that important? It's important because you want that material to show up just in time and not sit on a shelf for weeks or be late and delay the entire project. So this is, scale is not accurate, but the relationship between before and after is exactly correct. It used to take 40 minutes to do a planned release and 40 minutes to do a reschedule. And every time you do a reschedule, another 40 minutes using the Excel spreadsheet. We were able to reduce that time from 40 minutes down to less than 6 minutes, and then finally down to less than 3 minutes. And we are talking about uplifting and presenting huge volumes of data. The data updates that happen are the result of the simulation and rescheduling process done in the sandbox. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here's a product called TreeGrid, just the upper left corner of it. We did custom extension to TreeGrid so that we could have specific layouts of columns in the TreeGrid for specific users, for specific reasons, so that they would not have to flip screens and lose context of the entire project. We also involved what is called, and I apologize and not for the blurred data. I am under an NDA with this customer, so I cannot present part numbers that you can actually read. So I'll help interpret the blur for you. On the left side are item IDs or part numbers. And as you move across the screen, you get more detail of planned purchase orders, actual purchase orders, planned work orders, actual work orders, and their relationships to the purchase orders that supply them. So that when you make a schedule change, it automatically changes the where to get purchasing that hasn't done. We also, in real time, are showing the total standard hours of performance, the actual remaining hours of performance, and whether or not the performance of that routing structure is going to overload a specific work center, so that the scheduler, in the context of the entire project, can make that change and avoid overloading the factory with impossible to do work. Excuse me. So then the second step, the first step is load the project plan and review all the start and stop dates. So I think I'll point with this here. So all of these you might recognize as date icons. And because all the work is linked to all the purchases, when work changes and the purchase date changes, if that violates, like for instance, you had to start it a day before today, we highlight the row red so that the scheduler clearly sees that there is an issue that has to be resolved. When they finally load the project and apply the standard hours ratio, which is an efficiency ratio, which says we're using a plus 20% efficiency or a negative 10% efficiency, we change the standard hours. Did I do something wrong? Oh. We change the standard hours so that we can reload the shop with valid data for the shop schedule. So that update of standard hours is step 2. Step 3, we see the real-time factory capacity position with respect to the plan that was just changed. Does that create an overload, in which case a red line appears. So to highlight the problem that's going to exist if you release this project. Step 4, you're setting the scheduled dates, and you'll see that you have an arrow pointing up and an arrow pointing down. An arrow pointing up is delaying the project to a date farther out. An arrow pointing down is moving in the project to a date closer than the date that was originally scheduled. It's called pull in and push out dates, forward and backward scheduling. It's important because, again, if you have a constraint, you want to see it here in one screen. You don't want to report tomorrow that you created a problem today. When you're finally ready to go, step 5 is you commit the factory schedule, the data to the factory schedule. And what this is meant to show you is what the work centers were that were changed, and the original start and stop dates, and the new start and stop dates, so that there's no confusion about what was actually committed to the factory schedule. So we did all of this with TreeGrid, and when we have a scenario that happens every day, because things happen that you have to deal with in rescheduling your factory, we simply load the released project now back into TreeGrid. We recalculate new dates as necessary, and then we unload the shop floor for just those work breakdown routings that changed. Not everything, just those that changed. We unload that data from the shop floor, and we reload the data on the shop floor for the new start and stop dates that are required for the project to be completed. And when you're all done, you get to see the pleasing result in a Gantt chart. So that's using one screen. Well, Gantt chart doesn't count, but one screen for project-based planning and scheduling. We did this to help them with their factory flow. Many factories will do a work order and receive 5 widgets and put it on a rack somewhere for storage, and later that's drawn down by some other work order. That's not what's happening here. We do what is called a factory flow. It's like a fire hose. Once you start the project, it blows through all of the department work centers to the final assembly point, crating and shipping. So that's quite a bit different than a classic manufacturing scenario. So that's it. That's how using TreeGrid as a means to display data on one screen so that you can take informed action, make changes after your plan is proven to be inadequate, and be confident that the result is an executable plan in the factory. TreeGrid is a JavaScript control which is available in React mode, a Vue library, and a vanilla JS library. We did our own extensions to it, and those extensions include a JSON transformer of data that had to be transformed for SQL Server. We do our own, where's my, I'm missing a slide here. There it is, okay. So the user interface is TreeGrid.js and our custom extensions. The business logic is all AwareIM, doing all of the business logic, and is the conduit of data to the SQL Server database. The integration layer is all done by our people. It includes custom C# real-time APIs, as well as REST services. And then finally, data storage. The ERP system resides in an enterprise version of MS SQL, but our sandbox planning and rescheduling is all done in a separate database using SQL Express. So that's the solution architecture, and it preserves the simulation side from the execution side until you're ready to merge the data together. So that's what we've done with TreeGrid, and if you can find it, an opportunity, and you're interested in it, we'll point you to the website. It's an excellent product. We cannot provide you, unfortunately, the VSV. We can provide a new customer a VSV, but we cannot provide that to you. The JavaScript is also proprietary, so unfortunately that's not available to you as part of the contract, so we apologize for that. But if you need our help in this regard, you can call us. Yes, sir. initial calculation to determine what has changed as a function within Aware. Okay? And then what we actually do is we send those parameters to Aware to be processed, and then we use a heavy amount of TSQL, Transact SQL, to do the calculations. We did that after we found that if we tried to programmatically do it outside of the SQL environment, thank you very much, we were injecting performance issues. But once we moved all of the calculations into TSQL, performance was not an issue.
Sorry, just one more question. I'm not sure if you be able to answer it, or maybe like Sean or one of the other guys could answer it from AwareIM. One of the, so I come from an exchange background, from an infrastructure background, and when you want to deploy stuff like an exchange server, you do what you call like a planning.
Yes.
So you know how many servers you need based on the number of users, etc. This seems real heavy. Is there any best practice around planning when you're deploying large-scale solution like this, in terms of how many SQL server you might need, or how many web servers you will need based on the number of users, etc.? Anything that you want to share regarding that?
Sure. So the number of users is not the issue because there's principally one or two. We did make it a multi-user system so that we have user lockouts of data appropriately. In terms of throughput, SQL Server is very competitive. It deals with huge volumes of data quite nicely. And the secret to SQL Server performance is gobs of main memory in your server, because that's where SQL works, is using main memory in your server. In terms of the other aspects of system performance, we have on occasion seen network issues, because we have, for instance, an entire list of planned projects that have not yet been scheduled, and an entire list of release projects that need to be rescheduled. And we're not just updating a list of one line, we bring in the entire data set into the sandbox. So we're doing all of that processing locally. This also has a positive impact on throughput because we are not burdening the network with huge amounts of data volume going back and forth. Yes, sir.
How long did it take to develop this application?
Very good question. And let me kind of step back for a moment and describe how we approach custom solutions. We approach custom solutions with three attributes, one of which a customer can control. A customer can control the specifications, or they can control the total budget, or they can control the calendar. So they can choose one of those control attributes, and we control the other two, which in this case was very important because they chose to control the specification attribute of what they needed to have done. Why was that important? They changed their fundamental planning concepts 4 times. So we actually had to rewrite the guts of this 4 times, and they paid for it. It took 2 years.
And how long have they been using it?
They've been using it for 6 months now.
And the training on it?
Well, since they were completely involved day to day, weekly, day-to-day and weekly sprint meetings, the training just came along as virtue of the actual development. Yeah. The actual second user trained in this was cake. It's just,
I assume they're very happy with the system.
Yes, quite. Yeah. Oh, I mean, 40 minutes to 6 minutes and 3 minutes, yeah. So, yeah, that's the principal metric. And by the way, it's more than 100,000 work orders. It's more than today, more than 200,000. They have currently 2,200 open projects. If you explode that out, it's about, 250 or so thousand work orders. Exploded again to the number of route steps, probably close to 1 million route steps that have to be planned and replanned. And again, if you don't have the context of the entire project in front of you, you have to go to this screen and that screen, this screen, and do this transaction and prove that that data went through. It just, it's not going to work.
So when the work orders come in,
tablets in another application we did for them that we highlighted last year, which was the material logistics system. They use 8-inch tablets from the track, point A to point B. They can do the same if they decide to use our shop floor system. They haven't yet decided to do that. And why? Because they're cheating using this efficiency ratio. So the accounting department takes a look at past month performance and then tweaks that ratio so that we can change the standard hours before they commit the plan.
Is that where they use the CAN board thing that you showed us last time?
Yes. And it's my prediction that they will use our shop floor system because why not?
I copied that for designers, the same thing.
I'm glad.
They start in process, fill.
Yeah, so that brings up a very important point here, by the way. Take a break. For those of you who were here last year, we demonstrated a Kanban board for material movement tracking from PO receipt, possibly to engineering, possibly to quality, in transit, and finally to the rack location where it's supposed to go. Because we license plate the material, the Kanban is the license plate, the actual card. And so as the card moves and it goes to its final location, if I'm carrying that card and I'm carrying the product to the rack location, I'm accountable for that material in that quantity. And when I put it away, I'm done. I go back and pick up the next one. Our material logistics system goes far beyond that. It ties into work in process, from, getting work orders, all kinds of stuff, work order movements. Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to say that when we switched to that system,
Yeah.
they absolutely love the CAN, just moving their finger across.
Yeah.
And the other stuff.
I'm glad.
Thank you for you.
Well, I'm glad you can use that. Mark brought up a very interesting point last year, which I want to respond to. How do you keep the list from getting so long? And you do that by user role management, so that only the users in their role see the category of Kanbans that they're supposed to see, and only for as long as they need to see the Kanbans until they fully process to the endpoint. That's how you keep your Kanban short. Anything else?
One question, Britt.
Yeah.
So, Britt, what is your business like? You are into manufacturing of some engineering product, and your Aware application is a supporting IT system for your own business, or like, what is your business? I would really like to understand.
So, I spent from 1994 to 2012 with that ERP system. So there's nothing about that ERP system my team doesn't know. Right? That gives us an advantage to develop applications to fill what we call a donut hole. Packages, forgive me for pontificating for a moment, packaged solutions provide a service for a specific use case. Packaged solutions are not born to be agile solutions. You buy the package, and if you take our advice, you change your company in terms of what the package is and does, right? That works for some people. For other people, they say, well, the ERP system does planning and scheduling nicely and job costing nicely, but it doesn't do this. It doesn't do warranties. Its RMA system is for crap. And it goes on and on and on. So what we decided to do in 2012 was to fill the donut hole of the missing requirement for that customer. That led us to our business model. Finally, I'm getting there. And the business model is find the customer's requirement and fill it. And if it needs to be integrated, use your REST services and microservices for the integration points. It's all web app. It can be used anywhere in the world by any number of people within scalable limits. And our business is to develop those apps, and those apps that fit within our long-term goal of our own ERP system will become part of our own ERP system. We are doing real-time planning and scheduling. To my knowledge, there is no other company in the world that does that. We do what is called capable to promise, which is a simulation. Can I have 5,000 widgets, and what are my blockers? Right? We do classic MRP. We do a scalable inventory that is incredibly detailed down to individual serialized instances of the component, not to mention block tracking. So all of those things we are building on the Aware platform. And we intend to deliver our own ERP solution in a new, different way of modeling a licensing for customer use. We are not going to do seat licensing. Not. We are not going to have or require software maintenance fees every year. Not. And why? Customers need those things. So when we license our applications, we license them for a subscription amount, unlimited users with respect to the runtime count for Aware, unlimited users, and as an agile custom solution that's built to change for that company's specific requirements. We do not intend to feature bloat and present a customer with a solution which has far more feature than the targeted amount. If they want to go there, we're available for customization. That's our business.
Thank you, Britt. So, how about user load? How many users are using the application? What is the peak time user load? I would like to understand.
So there is no peak time because our customers generally are 24-hour operations. Maybe the third shift is not quite so full. We do not produce SaaS applications, and we never will. We do not in any way share data on a shared database, period, end of story. Our applications are deployed on the customer's server or on their own cloud instance. We don't want any part of SaaS at all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much.